My fiancé cheated on me, and my family helped hide it. I watched as my fiancé, Andy, packed his bag again. Lately, it seemed like he was always getting ready to leave. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, that something wasn't quite right. I tried to keep my voice steady as I asked, "Do you really have to go?" He paused for a moment, looking at me but not really meeting my eyes. "Yes, it's for work. I can't refuse," he said, and then turned back to what he was doing. I stared at him, feeling a knot tighten in my chest. I tried to sound casual, like it didn't bother me, but I couldn't stop myself. "You seem to be going out for work a lot these days," I said, almost as if I were testing him. Andy stopped for a second, then glanced at me with a defensive look in his eyes. "What are you implying?" he asked sharply, clearly not happy with my comment. I quickly backpedaled, trying to sound calm and unaffected. "Nothing," I said, shaking my head, "just stating a fact." But inside, I felt my unease growing. Something about this whole situation just didn't feel right. He grabbed his things and headed for the bathroom, his usual routine. I watched him go, my mind racing. Over the past few weeks, he had been acting strange, leaving often, always on his phone, meeting with people, and avoiding any real explanation. When I asked about it, I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that he was hiding something from me, maybe even cheating. Then, just as Andy disappeared into the bathroom, his phone buzzed. I froze. The sound of the shower, turning on moments later, filled the apartment, and I knew this might be my only chance. My hands were shaking as I picked up his phone, guilt already gnawing at me. I'd never done anything like this before, but I couldn't shake the fear that I was being lied to. I had to know the truth. I knew Andy's phone password. It was a secret I had learned early on, and now it was coming in handy. I unlocked his phone, my heart racing, and immediately saw the message. It was from a group chat titled Andy and Kira. My stomach dropped. Kira was my best friend. What the hell was this about? I took a deep breath and clicked into the chat. The list of participants shocked me even more. Andy, Kira, my mom, my sister, and my brother. I stared at the screen, my mind struggling to process what I was seeing. This group had been created 8 months ago. The very first message, sent by Andy, made my stomach twist in a way I couldn't describe. "Andy, I'm sorry you had to find out about Kira and me like this, but I can't let Erin find out. I love them both and still want to marry Erin." I couldn't breathe. What was I looking at? How could Andy be saying this? And why was my mom involved in this conversation? I scrolled further up, hoping for some kind of explanation. But what I found only made my heart ache deeper. My mom had messaged soon after Andy's admission. It was clear she had been upset at first, struggling with what Andy had confessed. She said he couldn't treat me this way, that he had to come clean. But then, a few days later, a message from her changed everything. She had sided with Andy. She hadn't told me. She'd kept it hidden from me all along, just like everyone else. It felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. The people I trusted most, Andy, my best friend Kira, and even my own family, had all been keeping this secret from me. I was left in the dark, watching them all play this game behind my back. The messages kept coming, each one more painful than the last. As I stared at the group chat, my heart twisted in disbelief. My mom had just asked Andy, "Do you really love Kira?" I couldn't comprehend it. My breath caught in my throat as I read Andy's simple reply, "Yes." Then, my brother Scott and my sister Maria jumped into the conversation. "Scott, maybe you should try an open relationship." Maria, "Yes, it's very popular now. Many couples live like this." I blinked rapidly, trying to make sense of what I was reading. Was this some kind of joke? Was my family seriously suggesting this? "Andy, we've been together too long. Erin would never agree to an open relationship." Then came the final blow. "Clarissa, then we will help you. We will help you hide this relationship until you're ready to talk to Erin." Andy, "Thank you guys, I really appreciate it." I felt my hands go numb. I was reading this on his phone, but it felt like I was outside my own body. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. My family had not only been covering up Andy's affair with Kira, but they were actively helping him keep it a secret. They'd been helping him lie to me, pretending everything was normal while all along they were supporting this betrayal. I scrolled through the messages, feeling the blood drain from my face. There were so many more things I hadn't known. Kira had even gone on a trip with Andy and my family while I had been sick and couldn't go. It broke me to see how easily they had kept this from me. But the hardest part wasn't that Andy had been cheating on me. It was that my mom had been so calm about it. She hadn't even tried to stop him. She didn't protect me. She protected him. It was like I wasn't even her daughter anymore. I couldn't just sit there and let it go. I knew what I had to do. I took multiple screenshots of the entire conversation, from Andy's confession to the messages from my mom and siblings. I even took screenshots of the messages between Andy and Kira, the ones with pictures. That pictures I never wanted to see, let alone have on my phone. I sent everything to myself, making sure to delete them from Andy's phone before he came out of the shower. I didn't want him to notice anything was off. I had to be careful. When Andy finally came out of the bathroom, I tried to act normal, though every inch of me was screaming to confront him right then and there. I wanted to scream, to throw the phone in his face, to make him feel every ounce of the pain he'd caused me. But I didn't. I kept my composure, Even though my heart was beating so fast, I thought it might burst out of my chest. I watched him move around the room, completely unaware of the storm inside me. He smiled at me, oblivious to what I had just discovered. He looked so calm, so carefree. My anger, my frustration, everything inside me was a tidal wave, but I kept it buried deep. I couldn't let him know that I knew. When he finished getting dressed, I walked him to the door, trying to act like everything was okay, even though my entire body was shaking. I wanted to ask him where he was going. To Kira? But I held back. I kept my mouth shut. For the next few days, I felt like I was going crazy. I couldn't think clearly, couldn't focus on anything. Every time I saw Andy, every time he smiled at me or tried to act like everything was fine, I felt this sickening wave of anger wash over me. It was like the entire world was a lie. Andy seemed to notice that something was off. He started asking me if I was okay. He even went so far as to buy a pregnancy test for me, probably thinking I was stressed about something unrelated. I wanted to throw the test back at him, tell him he was the last person I needed to be thinking about right now. Pregnancy was the last thing on my mind when the real issue was his betrayal, his lies, and the way my family had covered for him. But I didn't say anything. I just kept quiet, feeling like I was suffocating. Then, the day of the rehearsal dinner arrived. I had been dreading it, but I knew it was the time to confront him. I couldn't keep living this lie. I couldn't keep pretending that everything was fine. I was nervous, so nervous that my body was shaking. My hands were cold, my heart was racing, and I could barely breathe. But I had to do it. I had to expose everything. That afternoon, as we were getting ready for the dinner, Andy told me he needed to go somewhere before we left. I fought the words that almost slipped out of my mouth. To your lover, Kira, but I kept them in. I didn't want to give him the satisfaction of seeing me fall apart. Not yet. Not until I had the whole truth out in the open. I was ready. I had the proof. It was time to show Andy and my family that I knew everything. I was relieved when Andy left the house. I didn't want to be in the same room with him. The thought of him, of everything he'd done, made me feel sick to my stomach. I couldn't wait any longer to expose him. I had everything I needed. The screenshots from the group chat, the proof of his betrayal, were all ready. I set them on a timer, planning to send them out at exactly 5:30 p.m. That would be the moment when everything would explode right during the rehearsal dinner. I was sending the screenshots to Kira's family, my family, Andy's family, and all our friends. I knew it would cause chaos. It would be painful for everyone, but I didn't care. The truth had to come out. No more lies, no more pretending. As I arrived at the restaurant, my stomach twisted. My mom and her husband were already there, standing near the entrance. She saw me and immediately pulled me into a hug. I barely held it together, feeling like I might throw up at any second. But I quickly hugged her back, forcing a smile. "I'm so happy for you and Andy," my mom said, her voice brimming with excitement. She sounded so genuine, so thrilled for what was supposed to be the happiest time of my life. It felt like a punch in the gut. "Yeah, me too," I replied, my voice tight as I forced that smile to stay on my face. It was all I could do. The restaurant was beautiful, with soft lights and flowers everywhere. Everyone looked so happy, so carefree. But as I stood there, looking around at all the smiling faces, it made my stomach turn. No one knew the truth. No one knew the betrayal that had been festering under the surface. It felt like a cruel joke. I couldn't even look at Andy without feeling disgusted. I spotted Kira across the room, laughing with some of our friends. She looked so at ease, so happy, as if nothing had changed. But I knew the truth. She was the one who had been sneaking around with Andy, the one who had betrayed me. How could she act like everything was fine? As more guests arrived, my anxiety only grew. I kept checking the time, glancing at my watch every few seconds. The minutes seemed to drag on forever. 5:30 p.m. was getting closer, and my heart raced with anticipation. I couldn't back out now. Andy finally walked in, looking like nothing was wrong. He flashed his usual big smile, greeting everyone as if everything was normal. The tension in my chest tightened. How could he act like he hadn't just shattered everything? The restaurant hummed with laughter and conversation as everyone settled into their seats. I tried to keep my focus on the task at hand, but the weight of the situation was suffocating. When all the guests were seated and the chatter died down, Andy stood up to give a toast. He cleared his throat, and the room fell silent. People turned to face him, curious. I didn't want to look at him, but I had no choice. "Thank you all for coming today," Andy began, his voice smooth and confident. "I can't express how much I love Erin and how happy I am that our families can now unite into one big family." I nearly choked. The words he was saying felt like a slap to the face. How could he stand there in front of everyone and lie so smoothly? How dare he talk about love and family knowing what he'd done? My stomach churned, and I had to force myself to keep my face neutral. I smiled and nodded, playing along, even though every fiber of my being wanted to scream at him. Kira was sitting nearby, grinning like she didn't have a care in the world. She looked at Andy, hanging on every word, her eyes full of admiration. How could she be so calm? How could she pretend nothing was wrong when she knew she'd been sleeping with my fiancé? Andy kept going. "From the moment we first met, I knew Erin was the love of my life," he said, his voice full of warmth. "I want to spend every minute with her. Our first date, before he could finish the sentence, something strange happened. All at once, the sound of phones ringing filled the room. The noise cut through Andy's speech like a knife. People around me started checking their phones, looking around in confusion. The room was suddenly filled with whispers and murmurs. I didn't need to look. I knew exactly what had just happened. The screenshots I'd set to send had gone out, flooding everyone's phones with the truth. My mom looked at her phone, her eyes widening in surprise. "Did you prepare a surprise for us?" she asked, her voice full of curiosity, her tone completely unaware of what was really happening. I could barely process her question. I was holding my breath, waiting for the reaction that was sure to come. My phone buzzed, and I felt a knot tighten in my chest. The truth had been laid bare, and there was no going back now. I looked at my mom and gave her a strained smile. "Something like that," I said quietly. "But I'm not sure you'll like it." My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. My hands were cold, but I kept them steady in my lap. I knew what was coming. I'd planned it after all. I was ready, or at least, I thought I was. "Oh, stop it," my mom said, brushing off my comment with a chuckle. "I'm sure you did a wonderful Joe." She didn't finish the sentence. She had opened the messages, her face drained of color. Her mouth fell open slightly as her eyes darted across the screen, reading the screenshots I had sent, the ones showing everything. Her expression froze in shock, like she couldn't believe what she was seeing. I watched her closely, feeling a strange mix of satisfaction and sadness twist inside me. This wasn't how I ever imagined hurting her, but she had betrayed me just as much as Andy had. Across the room, I saw Kira's smile fade instantly. She looked at Andy with wide, panicked eyes. Her fingers fumbled as she reached for her phone. Andy pulled his phone out of his pocket, glanced at the screen, and then looked up at me. His confusion turned quickly to horror. His face went pale, and his jaw tightened. "Erin," he stammered, stepping toward me. I can explain everything." But he didn't get the chance. My Aunt Teresa shot up from her chair. Her face was red with fury, her eyes locked on my mother. "You heartless witch!" she screamed, pointing a shaking finger. "How could you do this to your own daughter?" Gasps spread through the room. Heads turned. My mom stood up too, her face hardening, her voice sharp. "I'm heartless?" she snapped. "Erin planned all of this. How could she ruin our lives like this in front of everyone?" "Our lives?" Aunt Teresa's voice cracked. "You're worried about your life while your daughter's heart is being ripped out?" My grandparents rushed over, trying to calm Aunt Teresa, who was yelling now, calling my mom every name she could think of. My mother didn't back down. They were shouting over each other, voices rising, echoing off the walls. The restaurant, just moments ago full of laughter and clinking glasses, had erupted into chaos. Some people were yelling, others whispering, in shock, and a few just stood frozen, unsure what to say or do. I stood still in the middle of it all, my hands clenched at my sides, trying to hold on to my calm. But then, Kira came up to me. Her eyes were wide with regret, her voice shaking. "Erin, I'm so sorry," she whispered. "But I hope you understand. We couldn't help our feelings. We've always been best friends. I hope we can get through this, and maybe still be friends." I stared at her in disbelief. Friends? My blood boiled. Something in me snapped. Before I even thought about it, my hand flew up, and I slapped her hard. The sharp sound cracked through the air like thunder. Gasps rippled through the room. Kira staggered back, her hand flying to her cheek, eyes wide in shock. "How dare you call yourself my best friend after what you did to me?" I shouted. My voice shook, but not from fear, from rage and heartbreak. "You went behind my back, with him, and you expect me to forgive that? Erin, don't touch her!" Andy shouted, rushing over. I turned to face him, all the pain and anger I had carried these last few weeks pouring out of me. "You're the most pathetic man I've ever known," I said, my voice steady and cold. "I truly pity you. You're going to have to live with this for the rest of your life, knowing exactly what you lost." Andy stopped in his tracks, his face crumbling. He looked defeated, like all the air had been knocked out of him. He didn't say another word. The entire room was chaos. People shouting, crying, arguing. Some guests were standing, others leaving. My family was fractured in front of everyone, our perfect little image torn to pieces. But in the middle of all the noise, I felt something unexpected. Calm. It was over. The truth was out. No more lies, no more pretending. I had exposed everything, and even though my heart was broken, I finally felt free. I turned my back on them, on the wreckage I had left behind, and walked toward Aunt Teresa, who was still in the middle of a heated argument with my mom. Her voice was filled with so much anger, it made the air in the room feel thick and heavy. I couldn't stay there any longer. The tension, the accusations, and it was all too much. "Aunt Teresa," I said, my voice steady as I approached her. "Let's go. They're not worth it." Aunt Teresa looked at me, her face flushed from the shouting, but she nodded without hesitation. She was as done with this as I was. I gently took her arm, guiding her toward the exit. We didn't need to say anything else. We both knew that leaving was the right choice. Just before we walked out the door, I stopped and glanced at the cake sitting on the table. It looked so perfect, so full of promise, just like the life Andy had tried to sell me. Without thinking, I stepped forward and shoved it hard. The cake toppled over, splattering across the table and crashing to the floor in a mess of frosting and fondant. Enjoy your sweet life, lovebirds, I shouted over my shoulder, my voice full of a bitterness I hadn't even realized I felt. Until then, Aunt Teresa and I walked out of the restaurant, our footsteps echoing in the quiet night. The chaos behind us was already fading, but there was something almost peaceful about walking away from all of it. Once we were outside, Aunt Teresa slowed down and looked at me with concern. She reached out, placing a hand on my shoulder. "I'm so sorry, Erin," she said softly. "This must be so hard for you." I wiped away a tear that had slipped down my cheek. "It's going to be okay," I replied, trying to keep my voice even, but I could feel the weight of everything pressing down on me. For now, I'm just happy that Andy paid for the entire wedding. He won't get a cent back because it was supposed to be tomorrow. Aunt Teresa gave a small, knowing nod. Considering how many guests you were going to have, he's definitely going to be bankrupt after this. I couldn't help but feel a small sense of satisfaction. "Yeah," I said with a tiny smile. And I also found messages between Andy and Kira, talking badly about his boss. I have a feeling Andy's going to be out of a job soon, considering those screenshots somehow made their way to his boss. Aunt Teresa raised her eyebrows in surprise, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "And they say miracles don't happen," she said, a hint of amusement in her voice. We both laughed, and for a brief moment, I felt like myself again. But as the laughter faded, I realized my cheeks were wet with tears. My heart was shattered, the weight of everything I had just exposed still heavy in my chest. But even through the pain, I knew I had done the right thing. The truth was out. I had taken control of my own story, and now I could move on. Aunt Teresa noticed my tears and gently wrapped her arm around me. "You did the right thing, Erin," she said, her voice full of warmth and reassurance. "You're strong, and you'll get through this. You've already taken the hardest step." I wiped my tears away, feeling a little comfort in her words, but the pain was still raw. "I hope so," I said quietly. "It just hurts so much right now." "I know it does," Aunt Teresa replied, "but you've exposed the truth. You've taken back your power. Now you can start healing. It might take time, but you'll get there." We walked on, side by side, our steps in sync. There was sadness in my heart, but there was also a strange sense of relief. The truth was finally out, and there was no going back. Whatever came next, I could handle it, and for the first time in a long time, I knew I wouldn't have to face it alone. "I don't know what I would have done without you," I said to Aunt Teresa, my voice full of gratitude. Aunt Teresa smiled warmly, her hand squeezing my shoulder. "You'll always have me," she said. "We're family and we stick together, no matter what." I smiled back at her, feeling a little lighter, a little less lost. The weight of everything I'd been carrying felt just a bit easier to bear. As we kept walking, leaving the restaurant and the chaos behind us, I realized something. This was the start of something new. It was the beginning of a life where I could be free, where I could heal and rebuild. And with Aunt Teresa by my side, I knew I was ready to face whatever came next.